It's Davetona drive time for Monday, March 2nd, 2026. It's already March. This year has flown by. I find it hard to believe that I started recording these podcasts in December. It feels like I've only just recently started. What is this, either episode 12 or 13, one of those. See, I already forgot how many numbered episodes I've done. I'm also bad at just keeping track of time and just things in general. Anyway, this episode, we're starting a different kind of format. I'm going to try to break away from doing like the whole weekly news stuff. Frankly, it's kind of hard to keep track of a lot of stuff, and also just some bigger stories, like just have an opinion worth sharing or talking about to like make some topics worthwhile. And I'd rather not sound like I'm like fleeting trying to find my words to describe a story. So, also, if you want your gaming news, there are other avenues for that are probably a lot more entertaining than I am. Not to sell myself short, but, you know, we're flying at the seat of our pants here. So I'm going to try something else. I talked about it last week. I'm going to make these more, like, topic-focused. So, like, make each episode more focused on, like, a particular subject as it relates to games. This week, I want to talk about my favorite controllers, because I feel like that's something fun to talk about. I got some passionate words to say about certain controllers. We'll talk about some good, some bad, but yeah. Let's start with one controller that I don't think many people messed around with, that I have very passionate, positive feelings for. And that is the Google Stadia controller. Stadia, rest in peace, was Google's attempt at breaking into the video game market via their streaming service. It was a service for you to stream games to your phone, your computer, your TV, all that stuff. I used the tech not very frequently, but when I did use it, I was very impressed with it. I liked Stadia as like an alternative to play certain games, but not as like a main platform at all. Like, it is not a substitute. It is not a straight up substitute for playing games like natively on a machine. But like in a quick fix, like, hey, I don't want to download 200 gigs of Destiny 2, but I want to hop in there. Like, it was great for Destiny 2. And other games I played on the service, like I tried out, what was it, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I don't really like Assassin's Creed, but playing that, I'm like, hey, this game's all right. I kind of like Odyssey. Like, it was pretty fun. And for my personal internet connection, which at the time Stadia was around, I was living in North Carolina at the time, and I was getting at most like 50 megabytes down. Nowhere close to fiber speeds. But even on that connection, like, it was more than playable, and it looked fine. So I had a very positive experience with the technical side and the gameplay side of Google Stadia. The business side of things, not a fan. I did not like the idea of paying full price for a game that was only playable if I had an internet connection. Granted, games are like that nowadays, but even so, like playing it through streaming is just a lesser experience overall. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, there were hiccups for sure during playthroughs. Like, the image would definitely, like, the bit rate would go out of whack. You know, like, let's not sugarcoat it. It didn't look great all the time. But even so, I was very pleasantly surprised with the tech. So, towards the tail end of Stadia, I want to say, like, probably within the last year, they started this deal where, like, hey, if you're a YouTube Premium member, you can get a Chromecast Ultra, like, a Stadia bundle. It came with a controller and a Chromecast Ultra. And I'm like, hell yeah, I'll take that. And granted, I didn't use the Stadia controller all that much because at the time, it was only, like, really usable with the service. The controller was a Wi-Fi controller. Like, it connected to your Wi-Fi directly and that is how it controlled the games. It didn't connect to your device. It connected to your Wi-Fi, which is very interesting and weird. But I don't know. It's kind of interesting. It was kind of neat that they just had a controller just do that. But that also limited its use case across other platforms. But granted, like, you wouldn't really be using it with anything else at the time. And once Stadia fell, they offered a software update for the controller that would turn it into a Bluetooth controller. So it would work with all your Bluetooth devices up to a point. So like any like third-party Bluetooth receivers, your PCs, your laptops, Raspberry Pis, stuff like that, Android devices, the controller would work with those. So I updated that and got some more use out of the controller than I would have otherwise. And damn, I really like the feel of this controller. It has such a nice, solid, premium build quality to it that I feel like a lot of other game controllers were missing. Like, you don't feel any rattle with this controller, aside from like the buttons. You know, buttons are gonna rattle, but like, it just felt so solid in your hands. I like the matte coated finish sort of to the plastic on the controller itself. It had the layout was a PlayStation layout, so like the dual analog sticks are on the bottoms, D-pad on the top left, buttons on the top right, you know. An old-fashioned PlayStation layout. The D-pad was a micro-switch D-pad. It was a bit more rigid, a bit more, stiff, I'd say, than other D-pads. But, like, it definitely prevented you from any, like, missed inputs. You have to be pretty deliberate, which, for this particular controller and, like, the shape of the D-pad itself, I thought worked pretty well. Joysticks felt great. I love the buttons on this thing. They're membrane buttons. They're nothing out of the ordinary for a typical game controller. But the shape of them and how they, like, they weren't convex, they weren't concave, they were just kind of flat, but they, like, had rounded corners, or rounded sides. And it, like, it wasn't completely flush with the top of the plastic on the controller, which you want that. You don't want your buttons to get stuck underneath the plastic. But just the shape of the controller and just the sensation of pressing down those buttons on the controller felt so good. I feel like those buttons feel like better than any other like first-party controller that I have felt, at least in this generation. Those buttons are fantastic. I love the feel of them. The bumpers, the L1, R1, they're micro switch. They're pretty. I don't want to say loose. They press down pretty quickly. They don't have a whole lot of resistance, but like not too much where you're going to mispress them a lot. But like it feels pretty all right. It feels just right. And then the triggers, they're more along the lines of like an Xbox One, Xbox Series, modern Xbox controller, where the triggers themselves feel kind of fat to press down, but like when you bottom out, like it has like a nice soft cushiony feel to it that's still pretty solid. But yeah, that's kind of a rundown of the controller. But damn, like I wanted to bring up the controller because every time I hear people talk about it, they just had nothing but negative things to say about it. And I feel like most people have that opinion because, for one, Stadia has this negative stigmatism about it. And I feel like if you played Stadia with that controller, like you probably didn't have a great experience, as most people didn't have a great experience with Stadia. So they would associate the bad experience with the controller they played on it with. And, you know, I mean, I can't, like, I mean, controllers are going to be subjective. Like, this whole entire thing is subjective, you know. But damn, I feel like Google fucking nailed it. They nailed it with this controller. It feels so good. And as far as I know, the official channels to convert existing Google Stadia controllers into Bluetooth is no longer available, but people have made backups of that. I feel like there are ways to turn existing Stadia controllers back into Bluetooth controllers. I've debated buying old Stadia controllers just to convert them. They released them, I think, in like 2, maybe 3 colors. There's a white one and a black one. I want to say there was an orange one, but I don't know if that was only in like press releases or like just marketing material. I don't know if that was ever made. But I have the white one. Having a black one would be really nice. But in terms of my current use case for the controller, this is my PlayStation 2 controller. I have a 8-bit DO Bluetooth receiver for my PlayStation 2, and the Stadia controller is what I use with it, and it feels great. It is fantastic. If you ever come across a Stadia controller for super cheap, or just curious about if it was good or bad, like, go for it. I loved this thing. If I didn't have, if I'm being honest, I have other controllers that I enjoy a lot more than the Stadia controller, but for what the Stadia controller is, it's wonderful, and I wanted to bring it up because no one really talks about how wonderful it is. It would be my daily driver if I didn't have my next controller that I want to talk about, which is, this is my most recent acquisition, actually. The 8-bit DO Pro 3. I think that's just what it's called. It's just called the Pro 3, SN Pro 3. Their most modern controller. Now, I've been trying to find a really solid micro switch controller. Years ago, I was at a Best Buy, and they had a demo for the 2012 SSX reboot, which I love that SSX reboot. And the controller that they used with that display was this Razer tournament controller, and I cannot remember the name of it, but like, it got a lot of flack in the press for like being banned at tournaments. Oh my god, what's the name of that Razer controller? It's gonna bother me. But anyway, check the show description. I'll put the name of the controller in there if I can remember it. The joysticks could twist, and that would change the resistance on them, which for SSX actually felt really nice. Like, having the resistance on the controller when you're carving your way through the snow felt really nice. D-pad was kind of garbo, but the face buttons were micro switch. They were very light pressed micro switch face buttons, and I never felt anything like that on a controller before. And I'm like, damn, I really want something like this. And so for years, I've tried looking for controllers, and more recently, these pro level, like third-party controllers, like from Razer and Thrustmaster and other ones, have been doing these like pro tournament level controllers that have like Hall effect joysticks and micro switch D-pad and micro switch buttons, and some of those feel pretty good, but they would be lacking in other areas. Like the Thrustmaster controller that I had like swappable joysticks on it, and the buttons felt great, but the D-pad had so much travel on it for our micro switch D-pad. Like, it felt like it wasn't properly seated. Then I bought like a Razer Wolverine, like the cheapest model Wolverine they had. It was a wired controller. It was like $60. That had a micro switch buttons, micro switch D-pad, which feels really nice. The shape of the D-pad is reminiscent of a Saturn Model 2 pad, which felt really nice. But imagine that being micro switch. I really like that. But the joysticks on that thing just felt so hollow. The sound it makes on the Razer Wolverine when the joystick hits the side of the plastic, it had this like hollow sounding feel that felt so cheap and not premium at all. And I could not get over that. Could not get over with how awful that sound was. But I use that controller. I still use it from time to time because certain PC games I play require a wired controller. I think of that Sega Rally 25th anniversary release that was a fan-made release. It only works with wired PC controllers. Like, anything wireless just makes that game crash. It's just part of the fan patch. Nothing much I can do about that. But the controller that replaced that Razer Wolverine was the SN30 Pro 3, or again, I think it's just called the Pro 3. It came with a charging dock. It looks like a Super Nintendo pad with like little handles on it. like, it's an 8-bit controller. That's what you expect, shape-wise. But I love the bells and whistles of this thing. So the buttons are not micro switch, but they feel really nice. They're also magnetic, so like you can actually change the layout of the face buttons physically. So like if you wanted like a Nintendo layout or an Xbox layout, you can do that. And you can change that in settings and have that carry with you. There's a little switch on the back too, where you can change that up. The D-pad on this thing is micro switch and feels fantastic. My only gripe with it is that it doesn't have a pivot in the middle, so you can technically press down all 4 directions at the same time, which I imagine is going to be a pretty substantial problem for some people. But for the way that I play certain games with it, it hasn't become a problem for me personally. I'd imagine if I were to ever get around to playing like Tetris or something like that with it, it might be a problem. So I'll get back to you on that at some point. But it's great for like 2D games, 2D platformers, other stuff that I've been playing with it, like menu navigation and everything like that. Feels really good. I love the joysticks on this thing. They're not Hall effect. They're like this new magnetic sensor that's like all the rage now that I'm blanking on the name of. They have this lightness to it. There's not a ton of resistance, but it also has like that. I wouldn't call it a hollow feeling, but it has like a higher pitched noise when it comes in contact with the plastic. But it's also solid at the same time. And like, I've never really felt joysticks like these. They're a lot smaller than I would say like a typical modern day first party controller's joysticks are. They're a little bit smaller, but not as small as like a Nintendo Switch joystick. Like they're definitely like a full size joystick, but like the actual like the unit itself is a bit smaller in size. I'm trying to describe it as best I can, but still has plenty of travel on it to feel substantial. Still feels really good. The shoulder buttons are in line with like Super Nintendo's shoulder buttons, where the bumpers are. Those feel pretty good. There's like a second set of buttons next to those that are micro switch that can be remappable. It's got paddles that are remappable. And my favorite part of this controller probably is the triggers. It has like fat triggers. It reminds me a lot of the Stadia controller, which is probably why I like it so much. Has a good bit of travel. Feels great in the hand. Feels great to press down. But they also have hair trigger locks on them that you can activate. And when you activate these hair trigger locks, it just turns them into a button. But it's with a micro switch. It's a mechanical micro switch button that these triggers turn into. Not quite like a GameCube, but kind of sort of that sensation without the analog push down of it, you know with a GameCube controller, they're analog and then you have the button press at the very end. Imagine that, but it's a micro switch. But also don't imagine that, because it's nothing like that. It's nothing like that at all. It's a hair trigger that turns the analog triggers into mechanical micro switch buttons. And it feels really fucking good. It feels really nice. But also, like, you're not losing, like, I don't want to say you're losing functionality. Like, if you were to play a racing game and you turn on the hair triggers and turn them into micro switch mechanical buttons, like, those still mimic, like, pressing down the trigger all the way. So, if you want to play racing games like that, you totally can. Great for shooters. I don't play first-person shooters with a controller anymore, or third-person shooters for that matter, with a controller anymore. But it's a great option for that. But yeah, the controller comes with a dock, and there's a. What I love about 8-bit docks is that it has a port in the bottom of the dock that has a little housing in there. You can plug the receiver into the dock, then plug the dock into your PC, and it'll just activate whenever you take the controller off of the dock. And when you put the controller back on the dock, it turns the controller off and it starts charging. It's so smart. I love this thing. It's great. It is my daily driver controller for PC when it functions with the games that I play with it. Again, that Sega Rally 2 anniversary, 25th anniversary is fickle with it, but that's also like a fan-made thing. That probably doesn't take into account what this controller's doing. But I can just plug in a wired controller and it's fine. It was still having trouble functioning when the 8-bit DOE was wired, so I think it might just be an 8-bit DOE thing. But I don't know. It's not the worst thing to happen. Especially when I have other controllers that are functioning just fine. That's more of a me issue. But this controller functions on a PC, wirelessly, works on, it's also a Bluetooth controller. It's not reliant on the receiver, so you can use it on PC as a Bluetooth controller. You can use it on your phones, your tablets. It also works with the Switch and Switch 2 if you want to use it that way. But yeah, that is a awesome modern controller. Highly recommend that. And it's been on sale pretty frequently. I bought it at close to full price. I got it on a sale price, but has only gone on steeper discount over the last few months. I want to say, as of this recording, you can get it on Woot for like $50, and it is so worth it. So worth it. If your main platforms are Switch 2, or PC, this is the controller you want. This is what you want. And I guess while we're on the topic of Switch, I don't want to put this on my favorite controllers, but I do want to give a special honorary shout out to the Switch 2 Pro Controller's joysticks. I've never felt joysticks on a controller like that before in my life. The rounded corners, whenever you press up the joystick against the plastic, it has a soft, smooth finish to it. It doesn't there's no grittiness to when you're twisting the joysticks around. It feels so smooth. I've never felt a joystick like this. It feels awesome. It's so good. I love that thing. The joysticks. The controller itself is pretty alright. The D-pad is better than the first gen Switch 2 controller. I paid a lot of money for it. I'm trying to get as much use out of it as I can. But I am liking it for what it is. I wish Switch 2 had analog triggers. I don't know what they were thinking by not having analog triggers. I understand that it's a handheld device and you got to make concessions somewhere, but the option would be nice, especially when there are games that are being developed that have analog trigger support but require the use of a GameCube controller, which is hysterical. Like Grid Legends on Switch 2, you can't have analog gas and brake if you use the GameCube controller. And I want to say Trials Rising, when it came out on Switch 1, that does the same thing with the GameCube controller, which you need analog gas and brake for that game. Any Trials game. Let's talk about some old controllers. Like the GameCube controller. I love the GameCube controller. The GameCube controller is perfect for playing GameCube games and really nothing else. It's good for Tony Hawk. I like that button layout for a Tony Hawk game. But playing Switch 2 online, the Nintendo Classics GameCube games on Switch 2 with a Switch 2 controller or just Switch controls, and I've encountered this before playing an emulation in the past, but it makes you really think about man, these games were really designed for a GameCube controller button layout. I think of stuff like F-Zero GX specifically, where the A button's your gas, and then your boost is the Y button. And the way that your thumb rests on the A button and the tip of it is on the Y button, it's just, it feels so natural to have those buttons on top of each other like that. I really like that. It's great. And pressing the X button to the right of the A button to do little side swipes, it feels so perfect for that. I understand why this didn't become the industry standard. It was pretty wild of a button layout to begin with, but also Nintendo wasn't really conforming to other companies when it came to controller layout at the time. Look at the N60. It laid the groundwork with the Super Nintendo controller and then was just fuck it. Let's just do some wacky stuff. Like, N64 was wacky in a bad way. I don't like the N64 controller. But I feel like the GameCube was the right kind of wacky because it also felt nice in the hand. It felt really good to play with. We were talking about the analog triggers on GameCube leading up to this. And personally, I'm not the biggest fan of them. They're functional, they're fine. But when you're playing on a GameCube controller that is like so overworn out and those analog triggers can stick and like grind, it is a horrible, horrible feeling. Feels terrible. If you play a lot of Smash Brothers, you know what I'm talking about. When you play Smash Brothers with a pretty rotten GameCube controller. You need that thing to be like super tight, like, and the triggers are just like super responsive. Like, you need responsive triggers for that game. Because you're shielding, you're like doing your little shield dashes, and you're like rolling and stuff. And it's been a hot minute since I played Smash Brothers. But yeah, GameCube controller has its haters for sure, but I enjoy it. Also, it has like the octagonal gates on it, which I was a big fan of. I like the clackiness whenever you're like rotating the sticks around. That controller is not great for shooters, but I certainly played a lot of 007 on it. Agent Under Fire, a good chunk of Nightfire. But damn, I love that thing. I love the GameCube controller. Great at playing Nintendo games and not much else. When it comes to Sega controllers, obviously the Saturn Model 2 pad is a personal favorite of mine. I was messing around with my Dreamcast or not my Dreamcast, but a Dreamcast. I guess that's mine. It's not my original one. I was messing around with the Dreamcast this weekend. And I loved my Dreamcast, or I love my Dreamcast. I loved that controller growing up. But as I've gotten older and held onto that Dreamcast controller, it is not super comfortable in my hands anymore. Like, as a young 7 to 8 year old playing Dreamcast growing up, like, that controller felt really good in the hands because I had small, tiny little baby hands. But having a grown-ass adult hands, there's a crampiness to that controller. But you kind of get used to it. The joystick, it being like a piece of plastic, as a child was not a problem for me, but as an adult, I had to really grip that thing. But also, like, weather's dry up here, my thumbs are like slipping off the joystick. And like, after playing like so many more modern controllers than going back to a Dreamcast controller, you just realize just how limiting it is. It almost feels like when you're trying to play like a modern game, or let's say like, what's a good example? Like, you're playing a game on another console that's being downported to a weaker console that just didn't have all the buttons and functionality. Like, it almost feels like that. Like, we were so like, the Dreamcast laid the groundwork for like certain modern controller layouts, especially for the Xbox. But man, the lack of a right analog stick hurts that console real hard in a lot of 3D games, especially like the Sonic Adventure stuff. You play Out Trigger, and that has a wild control scheme, which, I mean, it works, like, especially for the type of game that Out Trigger is. The Dreamcast controller definitely works. I feel like, I mean, that was an arcade game first, but like, that was a game that was like made with limitations in mind when it comes to controls. Like, they definitely had some fun, like, I would say the limitations were kind of fun, but I couldn't imagine playing a first-person shooter on this controller, man. Really can't. Like, Unreal Tournament and Quake, Quake 3 Arena came out on the Dreamcast. I never played those versions. I never owned those versions of those games. I've definitely played them at like MagFest. I feel like I played Unreal at a MagFest on Dreamcast, but just not a pleasant experience. I think Jeff Gerstmann put it the best. That Quake 3 port on Dreamcast was great when it had like cross compatibility with like the PC version, and so you could just be a PC player or just have the mouse and keyboard on Dreamcast and play with controller players online and just fucking dominate. I have that same sensation when I'm playing, Combat Master on PC. I love Combat Master. It's a first-person Call of Duty clone in the most charming sense of the word. But it's cross-play between PC and mobile, and a lot more people are playing it on mobile. So being a PC player and just hopping in a lobby with a bunch of phone players and you're just fucking destroying everyone feels real good. It's a really good game for specifically that purpose and nothing else. I like Combat Master. It's really goofy and dumb, but I really like it. But I imagine that's what that same sensation's like. Here's a topical old controller that I like. These games just were recently re-released to an extent. The Virtual Boy. I don't imagine very many people had experience playing a physical Virtual Boy, or at least had hands-on with the controller. That is also one that I haven't really touched in several years, but that's about to change. I recently got a hold of my original Virtual Boy again in its box, so I'll have to play with that sometime soon. But as a kid, I really liked that thing. It had two massive handles for you to grip onto, and it had I hesitate to call them triggers. They're where your index fingers would be when you're gripping it, but they were definitely like more rounded button shaped where the triggers would be. But it's a game controller that had modern design sensibilities while still being profoundly old. You know, like it was definitely like it was a step in the right direction for where things were going, but was still heavily influenced by where things were currently at that time. So it had two face buttons that had an A and a B button. It had the two triggers. It had a start and select, and it had two D-pads. It had two D-pads to try to fill in the blanks of like how, when you're playing 3D games on this thing, like how it's going to navigate a 3D space. And for the most part, like, it worked pretty well. I am a firm believer of the Virtual Boy. I really like the Virtual Boy. I really like the games on that thing. I think it's a really cool piece of tech. People are going to complain about headaches and eyesores, and they're not wrong. But the games on it were good. Like, they're fun. And I think the 3D gimmick is really neat. I don't think it's enough to carry a whole console as hard as it did, but I'm glad it exists. Only a company like Nintendo could make something like that, have it fail, and then still be all right in the end. And so I'm glad we have it for that. But no, I think that controller is really cool, and it's a real damn shame that they did not make a wireless Bluetooth Virtual Boy controller. Granted, all the functionality of a Virtual Boy controller could be replicated with modern controllers, so you're not missing much. But it would be really cool if they made a wireless Bluetooth Virtual Boy controller. That would be so cool. And I would buy that stuff in a heartbeat. I'm still considering buying that headset. But I haven't bitten the bullet yet because I own a real Virtual Boy. but having access to all those games would be really nice. The only thing holding me back is that Panic Bomber is not one of the games. There's no Panic Bomber. Real hell of an oversight, but for whatever reason, Konami's like holding on to Bomberman real tight. Like if you notice on like the other Nintendo Classics service games, there's not a single Bomberman on there. No Super Nintendo Bomberman, no Genesis Bomberman, no NES Bomberman, none of the Bomberman Hero games or N64 games, nothing. But they also just recently put together that Super Bomberman collection that has Japanese-only other games in the Super Bomberman series as well. So at least they're doing something with it. But man, I loved that Panic Bomber Virtual Boy game. I love the soundtrack. I love the music of the Virtual Boy. I love how it sounds. It sounds so cool. It didn't come to mind until recently that like the sound hardware in a Virtual Boy is reminiscent of like a TurboGrafx or a PC Engine. And I'm like, damn, that makes a lot of sense. They do sound really similar. I just never made that connection before. But that also probably explains why I like the sounds of certain TurboGrafx games too. Let's talk about another old favorite. I love, a big surprise here. Big surprise. I love the Saturn Model 2 pad. I think that's one of the greatest controllers ever made. Its form factor, its button layout, its D-pad, it's, for 2D games, it's a perfect controller. For fighting games, it is the perfect controller that is not an arcade stick. Or leverless, even. It is so well built, like layout wise. You could make arguments for its build quality. It does feel cheap in the hand. Like it's an old controller, you know. Like old retro style controllers have they're definitely super light. There is a cheapness to it, you know. It's not as girthy as the Model 1 pad, but you could also argue that was a big problem with the Model 1 pad. Model 1 pad isn't bad, but it's also not good either. It's not great. I've never seen a Model 1 pad out in the wild since I bought my Saturn initially. I have a Model 1 pad. Maybe I should play some more games with it. Should probably let's get a second take on the Model 1 Saturn pad sometime. The biggest glaring flaw of the Saturn pads, both of them, Model 1 and Model 2, are the shoulder buttons. I think they feel like trash. And they feel so unresponsive. They just don't feel good to press down or in the hand. They just don't feel, they feel horrible. They feel terrible. But not a whole lot of games really used them. And the games that didn't rely on them super heavily. Because most of the games that you were playing like heavily relied on the fact that you had 6 face buttons to work with. And the games that did use the shoulder buttons, the shoulder buttons worked. I'm not saying that they're broken. They definitely worked. But I think they just felt terrible. I really don't like them. Even though the Model 2 pads are like micro switched, like it's just lacking that sort of feedback that you would expect from a micro switch button, micro switch trigger, whatever you want to call it. It's just lacking that feedback. The travel on it, it feels like the most rattly of all the components on there. I feel like it just doesn't feel responsive, even though it is. I just don't like it. But the rest of the controller makes up for it. I've yet to find another D-pad on another controller that feels as good as a Saturn Model 2 pad. Like, I never really felt strongly about controllers until I got a Model 2 Saturn pad. Like, or played the Saturn really for the first time with a Model 2 pad. Like, I had like different opinions on certain controllers, but at the same time, at the end of the day, like, the controllers were controllers. I didn't think much of them, you know, like they got the job done. But then you play the Saturn Model 2 pad, and then like you have that like you have that like epiphany moment of like, oh my god, they fucking nailed it, and no one else is doing this. Like, how did we nail D-pad Valhalla and no one's following suit? How did this happen? You figured it out. Fuck, that D-pad is so good. And then, like, you have, like, the Retrobit controllers that they've licensed the Saturn molds and, like, have recreated, like, new Saturn controllers for, like, USB and wireless, and for, like, new Saturn Model 2 pads using the old Sega molds. Like, they're licensed out to Retrobit. And I've bought a few of these, and they're just fine. They don't quite, the D-pad doesn't quite nail it. Like, some directions on it, like, it doesn't get it 100% all the time. Like, it's responsive and it's fine, it's playable, but like that feel, that feedback you get from a authentic real Model 2 pad, it just doesn't feel the same on these Retrobit pads. And then you have the Saturn Pro controller that Retrobit did. I have one of those, and I really like that thing. It's got the dual analog sticks. It's a controller that works. It's a wireless Pro controller for the Saturn that is also compatible with other systems and PC. Like, you can use this thing on a Switch if you want. Like, it has all the creature comforts and buttons and everything you need to make it a modern controller, except for analog triggers. They were so close. We had a third-party wireless controller that has a functional analog mode for Saturn games that had it, but we're missing the analog triggers. The 3D controller on Saturn had analog triggers, and that they felt really good. But it also, like, as much as I like that Saturn Pro, and I use that as my daily driver for Saturn games. That's what I play Saturn games on now. The D-pad isn't there, but it is functional. Like, they're close. They're really close. But sometimes, like, when I'm pressing a direction, like, I'm not getting that satisfying, like, little tactile bump sometimes that I get sometimes when I press down a Model 2 D-pad. But they're so close. They are so close. But I like pretty much everything else about that controller. I think it's really nice. And then they also had they were testing out the idea of like using the twin analog sticks to work with Virtual On. And I don't know how they got the button mapping on that right stick so fucked up with their first interpretation. I don't know if they've ever tried it again. I'll have to check the Retrobit website, but I did a stream around the time when that patch came out, when that firmware update came out, where they attempted to make Virtual On dual stick work on that thing, and it was just abysmal. Like, the directional layout on it was just so off. It just did not work. I don't know how they fucked it up, but they did. While we're on the topic of Saturn, the 3D controller. Let's talk about that. It's weird. I like a lot of stuff about that controller, except for the actual analog part. I don't like how that analog stick feels. You can definitely tell, like, a lot of R&D was put into this thing. But yeah, they just missed they missed the mark on this thing. The sensitivity on that joystick is outrageous. It doesn't feel good to play 3D games on. Like, if you're trying to play a game where, like, you have, like, you want analog, what's the word I'm thinking of? You want analog input when it comes to movement. Like, know, like in Mario 64, when you like pressing it a little bit in a direction, you get Mario to tiptoe and stuff like that. That granularity is kind of sort of there on a Saturn 3D control pad, but it's just so overly sensitive, and at least with my 3D controller, like there's like a weird amount of resistance to it that it just doesn't feel good at all to try to have that type of granularity with that controller. Like, I've talked about this in my Daytona CCE video, where like that controller is fully functional with Daytona CCE, but I don't recommend it. I don't like how the analog stick really feels when it comes to controlling that car. It's just so overly sensitive. Even when you tone it down in the settings, it just doesn't feel right. But I do like the analog triggers on that controller. I think they feel really good. I think the face buttons feel really good. The D-pad, not quite up to snuff with a real Saturn Model 2 pad. It feels a bit more stiff than a real Model 2 pad, but it still works. It'll still get the job done. For a hot minute, after I got the 3D pad, that was my daily driver Saturn controller. But nowadays, I just mostly keep it in its box. I have my 3D controller is in its original box that it came in, with all of its plastic and inserts and everything. I try to keep that thing as pristine as possible. So it doesn't get much use out of it. I do think outside of like a proper Virtual On mission stick, or not mission stick, but the Virtual On twin stick, which I also own one of those and I love that thing. I would say the 3D controller, the way that it's laid out, is probably the best feeling for Virtual On Saturn with a controller. And I've talked about this in the Virtual On video, your Saturnology pro tip. Playing with the like your left stick is your D-pad and your right stick is the face buttons, but the way that your thumb lands on the face buttons on a 3D pad and the way that they're laid out specifically is a way better fit for that control scheme than a regular Saturn pad is. And also using the triggers for your main attacks just feels way better. And then I'm trying to... Was there anything else with that control? Oh yeah, and Gale Racer. I have a lot of problems with Gale Racer. I like Gale Racer, but it's not a great version of Radmobile. But it was Saturn Memories who brought this to my attention. Playing Gale Racer in the 2D mode with the analog stick as like a D-pad, as a D-pad substitute. Or no, what was it? So certain driving games that don't have 3D support can be used with a 3D controller because they had analog steering. So like stuff like Daytona, original Sega Rally before the Netlink update, like those worked with the 3D pad. And it just substituted the analog control of the racing wheel and put that in for analog control on the joystick. And for some games it doesn't work too hot because you're meant to have, again, the granularity of a racing wheel. But when you play Gale Racer with that controller, it makes the game so much more responsive. Like, it practically feels like cheating. My big problem with Gale Racer, outside of like the low draw distance and the constant loading between stages, was that your car just doesn't feel responsive enough to handle a lot of like the oncoming hazards because of the low draw distance. But playing with the 3D controller, you have a lot more snappy. It feels way more snappy to control the car. It feels real nice. So if you've had negative experiences with Gale Racer, play it with an analog controller. It'll give you a much better appreciation for that game. It's still got problems, but you'll definitely have a way better time with it. guess we'll come to the end of this. Let me talk about racing wheels. I like me some racing wheels. Was it my go-to is a Logitech G29. That is what I use on my PC. It's a PS4 wheel, but it works on PS3 as well. I wish I had more of a use case to use that wheel more, especially for emulation. Like, I would love to play more Sega arcade racers with that thing. I want to get that thing set up with Techno Parrot so I can play some arcade racers, but the main thing holding back that wheel is the Logitech software. I fucking hate G-Hub. It is so unresponsive. I have to reinstall it every few months because the software will just stop working. And it won't work until I uninstall and reinstall it. Because I have a Logitech mouse, and my speakers are also Logitech speakers that work through G-Hub. And they're like these special like gaming speakers that I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. But they sound fucking amazing. So, and they were expensive. If it wasn't for the fact that I paid this much money for the speakers, and also the fact that they sound incredible, I would absolutely swap out these speakers because I hate the software. They're bulky. They use proprietary plugs that go into the subwoofer. It's very non-user friendly, but goddamn, these speakers sound amazing. But those speakers will fuck up because of G-Hub. And if G-Hub's not working, my racing wheel on PC also does not work. It is so frustrating. Especially when you have a wheel that has like 270 degrees of like freedom. Or like, it's like, maybe not that. It's a wheel that could do multiple rotations. And when you map that to an emulator, it just doesn't know how to like focus in on like how much range you want the wheel to be. Like, you have to do that in G-Hub. And it's so convoluted and confusing how to set that up in G-Hub. And also to figure out how to be like, hey, when I'm using this emulator program, have this profile for this wheel. And like, okay. But for Supermodel, because of how finicky Supermodel is, Logitech cannot properly identify what Supermodel is. It's really annoying. It makes me want to hold on to that old Thrustmaster wheel because it just fucking worked. I didn't have to work with fucking G-Hub software. God. Fuck G-Hub. Other than that, it's a nice wheel. It's really solid. It feels really great when it works. It's mostly meant for like sim racers. But when you get it to work with when you finally do get it work with emulation the way you want it to, with the feedback and everything, it feels great. Feels real good. I see that wheel goes on sale pretty frequently too. Like, I got it for a little over $200. I've started seeing it go for a little bit less than that. I also got like the 6-way Logitech shifter that goes with it, and that's been a lot of fun to use. I really want to get more use out of that wheel. I really like it. If it wasn't for fucking G-Hub. But yeah, I think that's it for controller talk. I ended up yapping more about controllers than I thought I would, honestly. I had a lot more opinions on more controllers. The only ones I had in mind were the Saturn pad, the Stadia pad, and the Virtual Boy pad. Oh my god, the Nijicon! Oh, who could forget the fucking Nijicon? I love the Nijicon. I bought like little PS2 USB adapters just for that thing to work on my PC. And I haven't done anything with it yet. I need to get that set up. Holy shit. I love the Nijicon. It's so cool. It's a Namco controller for the PlayStation where like the actual controller like twists and you use that to control driving games. And for stuff like, especially for Ridge Racer Type 4, it is the optimal way to play Ridge Racer Type 4. It feels so fucking good. Oh my god. I love the Nijicon. I need to set that up on PC. Holy shit. That's going to be so fun. I thought I'd have more to say about Nijicon, but I hope my enthusiasm makes you want to play the Nichicon. Here you go. The Nichicon had 2 models. There's the Model 1 Nichicon and a Model 2 Nichicon. Like the shape, the size and shape of them are slightly different. The Model 2 is a bit smaller, maybe a bit girthier to make up for the small size. And the buttons and build quality feel a bit cheaper. I'm more of a fan of the Model 1 Nichicon. I think it just fits better in my hand than the Model 2. But I'm very glad I have both of them. Thank you, Alina. I love the Nichicon. More people should play with the Nichicon. More games should support the Nichicon. They should make a new Nichicon. I want to say someone's making a new JogCon, which is the other Namco racing controller that has like a big old like analog knob, twisty knob, like a Pong paddle as your steering controller. Someone's making a new one of those. You're missing out. You need a new Nichicon. That's where it's at. Anyway, God bless the Nichicon. I think that'll do it for controller talk. Finally, we're done with controller talk. The Nichicon was the last one I needed to talk about. That was fun. I didn't think I have that much to say about controllers, but goddamn, I like doing the topic stuff way more. This was a lot more fun than talking news. I guess I could talk more about what I'm playing, but I didn't really play much of anything interesting. Steam Next Fest is happening. I played that Marathon. What was it? The Server Slam for Marathon. That was fun. I like that. I really enjoyed it, actually. Yeah, Marathon's cool. Marathon's real fucking cool. I'm actually pretty stoked to maybe... I might pick that up. I might pick up Marathon. I tried some other stuff in that Steam Next Fest. I tried none of the stuff I really played like super duper grabbed me. Like Airframe Ultra looks really fucking cool, but just really didn't do a whole lot for me. I know a lot of people who played it like really latched onto it, and that's cool. I'm really happy that game's finding an audience, but that is also it is not what I thought it was going to be, and what it was I just really wasn't digging a whole lot. But that's more of a me problem. I'm glad it's finding an audience because it looks cool. I tried Denshi Attack, that super stylistic railroad game where you're like doing stunts and it's all anime and shit. That's cool. I think it's coming out super well. Like it's coming together really great. I don't know if I actually want to play a whole game of doing that. I don't know if there's enough there for me to be like super invested and interested to keep playing it. Like there's a lot more story stuff involved than I was expecting, and I was just like not really super into it. But it's really cool. Like if you haven't tried it yet, and if it's still Next Fest when you're listening to this, like definitely try it. Try both of them. Like try Airframe Ultra, try Denshi Attack. They're both really cool. But I don't know. They're still being developed. There's still work to be done. I feel like Denshi Attack is pretty like solid in terms of like its mechanics, and Airframe Ultra is still like figuring out what it's trying to be. But yeah, that's pretty much what I played. Not a whole lot else. Played more Battle Golf, I guess, with friends, but we talked about that last time. Yeah, I think that's gonna do it for this episode. Oh man, we're at an hour or almost at an hour. I had to break this up into 2 different recordings. But yeah, this came out. This was fun. This was a lot of fun. I got to do more topics. I'll do more topics like this in the future, I guess. Here next week, let's talk about my experiences with the Saturn. What got me into it? Why I got one, and like how far we've come since I've gotten a Saturn in terms of like my interest in the platform and how I feel about it going forward. My experiences with the Saturn from when I first bought one. I feel like a lot more people would be interested in that type of stuff. This being a Saturn-focused channel for a long time. So yeah, we'll do that for next week. But until then, thank you for watching if you're on YouTube. Thank you for listening on your podcast app of choice. And I will see you next week. Have a good one. Take care.